The first thing you should know about Krax's Void Hub is that humans aren't welcome here. Not officially. Of course, the station administrator would cite some bullshit about equal opportunity commerce and species-blind trading policies. But everyone knows the truth. We're tolerated. Like that weird smell from the ventilation system nobody can quite fix. The second thing you should know is that I never wanted trouble. Just a quiet life fixing ships, trading parts, and drinking alone. 3 simple goals that somehow got shot to hell the moment she bit me. I was at Grazzo's stall, haggling over a perfectly serviceable quantum stabilizer that the 4-armed lizard insisted was factory new. It wasn't. The carbon scoring on the auxiliary port was at least 3 cycles old, and the casing had been cracked and repaired, expertly, but still visible if you knew where to look. And I did. 200 credits, I said, keeping my voice flat. Not a credit more? Grazzo's neck frills vibrated with indignation. You insult me, human! This part was salvaged from an Imperial cruiser. 700 is already friendship price. The Empire fell 30 years ago, I replied. And their cruisers used S-class stabilizers. This is an R-class knockoff manufactured on Proxima 3. 200. That's when I felt it. The sensation of being watched. Not the usual look at the human stares I'd grown accustomed to, but something more intense, predatory. I glanced over my shoulder and saw her for the first time. She stood a full head taller than me, which put her at well over 7 feet. Feline features with golden eyes that caught the station's artificial light. Gray-black fur covered most of her visible skin, though her face was more humanoid than animal. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, and those eyes that didn't blink as they locked onto mine. A Beastwoman, one of the many hybrid species that emerged from the wartime experiments. Some created as weapons, others as specialized labor. Most of them ended up without a place once the galaxy stopped shooting at itself. I turned back to Grazzo, ignoring the prickle at the back of my neck. 150 and I'll throw in that coolant regulator you've been asking about. The merchant was about to reply when I heard the movement. Fast, deliberate footsteps closing the distance. I started to turn, my hand instinctively dropping to the blaster I wasn't carrying. Station regulations. Too late. She moved with a speed that shouldn't have been possible for someone her size. One moment she was 20 feet away. The next, she was on me, powerful hands gripping my shoulders, spinning me around. I caught a flash of those golden eyes, widened with some emotion I couldn't identify. And then her face dove toward my neck. The pain was sharp but brief, as her teeth sank into the junction between my neck and shoulder. Not deep enough to sever anything vital, but definitely breaking skin. I heard gasps from the surrounding crowd, a strangled cry from Grazzo, and the metallic clatter of the quantum stabilizer hitting the deck. I didn't fight. Something told me fighting would make it worse. Instead, I froze, waiting for whatever came next. She pulled back, our eyes meeting again. A trickle of my blood stained her lower lip. Without a word, without any expression I could read, she released me and stepped back. The entire market had gone silent. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species, all staring at the spectacle of a human being bitten by a Beastwoman. Then, the whispers started, and I caught fragments in various languages. Imprinting, binding ritual, were forbidden, biological entanglement. Security arrived moments later. 4 Rigelian guards in the charcoal-gray uniforms of station enforcement. They approached, cautiously. Stun batons at the ready. Both of you, on your knees, the lead guard ordered. Hands visible. I complied immediately, still too shocked to resist. The Beastwoman hesitated, her golden eyes flicking between me and the guards. For a moment, I thought she might run, or worse, attack. But then she slowly knelt, placing her large hands palm down on the deck. What's the charge? I asked, wincing as the bite wound pulsed with heat. The guard's mandibles clicked together in what might have been amusement or disgust. Public biological bonding without consent or registration. Potential forced imprinting. Disruption of commercial activity. He paused. And whatever else Administrator Carul decides to add. Great. I'd finally met the station administrator, and it would be in a detention cell. As they fitted us with restraints, I risked a glance at the Beastwoman. She was staring straight ahead now, her expression unreadable. But for just a moment, when our eyes met again, I could have sworn I saw something in those golden irises. Relief. Explain this to me again, Mr. Draven, is it? Administrator Carul was not what I expected. I'd heard rumors about him, a cybernetically enhanced being from a species so old they'd given up organic bodies long before humans discovered fire. What sat across from me looked almost human, save for the silvery skin that seemed too smooth, too perfect. His eyes were the real giveaway, solid black orbs that reflected my own face back at me, tiny and distorted. There's nothing to explain, I said, shifting uncomfortably in the hard metal chair. My shoulder had been treated by a medical drone, cleaned and sealed, though they'd refused painkillers. I was haggling with Grazo when she attacked me. Not attacked, Carul corrected, his voice too precisely modulated to be natural. Bit, specifically. She bit you in the pattern consistent with a Lyrian binding ritual. He tilted his head. Are you familiar with this practice, Mr. Draven? No. Interesting. Carul's fingers tapped on the metal desk, making no sound despite their apparent weight. The female, designation Harriet, refuses to speak. Perhaps you could enlighten me as to why she would select you for such an intimate biological connection. I've never seen her before today, I said truthfully. I don't know why she chose me. Carul studied me for a long moment. Humans have a curious biology, Mr. Draven. Your pheromonal signatures are chaotic, unpredictable. Some species find this stimulating. His lip curled slightly. Others find it threatening. The Lyrian hybrid program was designed to create bonded warriors, soldiers who would fight to protect their chosen mates with unmatched ferocity. I frowned. I'm not a soldier. No, Carul agreed. You are a parts trader, with a suspicious past and questionable connections. Your presence on my station has been tolerated because you maintain a low profile and provide services that are occasionally useful. The implication was clear. I was useful until I wasn't. And now I definitely wasn't. What happens now? I asked. Standard procedure would be deportation for both of you. Biological bonding rituals without proper registration are prohibited in consortium space. Carul's black eyes seemed to absorb the light from the room. However, there is a complication, which is, Harriet's biological signature contains markers of military-grade genetic modifications. Specifically, the kind developed by Syndicate Research Division during the final years of the war. He leaned forward slightly. You understand my concern. If you have been imprinted by a weapon... I'm not imprinted, I said firmly, and I'm not a threat to your station. Carul's expression didn't change. That remains to be determined. Medical scans indicate an unusual neurochemical reaction in your system. The bite appears to have transferred a complex protein compound directly into your bloodstream. I felt a chill run down my spine. Am I in danger? Unknown, Carul replied flatly. But protocol is clear. You will be held in quarantine for 72 hours while we consult with biological warfare specialists. The female will be detained separately and examined. She has a name, I said, surprising myself with a sudden surge of protectiveness I felt. Harriet. Carul's eyes narrowed fractionally. Designation H4RR13T was a prototype combat unit developed for deep infiltration and assassination. If this is indeed the same entity, she is not a she, but an it, a weapon that should have been decommissioned after the armistice. I said nothing, but my hands clenched involuntarily beneath the table. "You will be escorted to quarantine now," Carul said, standing. "I suggest you use this time to consider your situation carefully, Mr. Draven. If you have been compromised by Syndicate technology, your options will be limited." As the guards led me away, I couldn't shake the memory of those golden eyes. Relief. Yes, but something else too. Something that looked disturbingly like hope. The quarantine cell was better than I expected. A small but clean room with a bed, toilet, and even a terminal with limited access to entertainment channels. No communications, of course, and the door was secured with both electronic and physical locks. They weren't taking any chances. My shoulder throbbed dully. The pain, now a constant reminder of those few bizarre seconds that had upended my life. I couldn't stop replaying the moment in my mind, the intensity of her gaze, the deliberate way she'd sought me out among hundreds of beings. Why me? I was nobody. A washed-up engineer turned parts dealer, existing on the fringes of society. I'd fled Earth after the war, unable to face what we'd become, what I'd helped create. The stabilizers I'd designed had been meant for colony ships. The military had repurposed them for dreadnoughts. Old story, the tools of creation twisted into weapons of destruction. But that didn't explain why a genetically engineered super soldier would single me out for some alien bonding ritual. Unless a cold thought formed. My work on quantum stabilizers had been classified. My name wouldn't have appeared on any public records, but within military channels, within the kind of intelligence a black ops division like Syndicate might have access to. Could this be about my past? Some delayed revenge for technology that had killed thousands? I was still mulling this over when the door slid open, revealing a slender, blue-skinned figure in medical whites. "Mr. Draven," the alien said, blinking large, compound eyes. "I am Dr. Vesnar, xenobiology specialist. May I enter?" I gestured to the room. "Not like I can stop you." Vesnar stepped inside, the door sealing behind him. He carried a small case which he set on the bed before facing me. "I understand you have questions," he said, his voice melodic with an untranslatable accent. "I may have some answers, though Administrator Carul would prefer I not share them." That got my attention. "Why would you help me?" Vesnar's skin rippled in what might have been the equivalent of a shrug. "I find Carul's policies regarding biological diversity to be problematic. Also, I am a scientist. Knowledge should flow freely." He opened his case, removing a small scanner. "May I examine your wound?" I hesitated, then nodded, pulling down the collar of my jumpsuit to reveal the bite. It had been sealed with synthetic skin, but the area around it was inflamed and warmer than it should have been. Vesnar waved the scanner over the bite, humming softly. "Fascinating. The protein compound is still active, integrating with your neurological system." He looked up at me. "Are you experiencing any unusual symptoms? Heightened emotions? Sensory changes?" I paused, trying to articulate the strange sensations that had been growing since the incident. "More aware. Colors seem brighter. And I keep thinking about her. Harriet." "As expected," Vesnar said, nodding. "What you're experiencing is the early stage of a Lyrian pair bond. The Syndicate modified traditional Lyrian bonding biology to create perfect soldier pairs. One protector, one protected. The bond ensures absolute loyalty and heightened combat effectiveness." "But I'm not a soldier," I repeated. "No," Vesnar agreed. "Which makes this situation particularly interesting. The bite ritual should only work if there is biological compatibility, and, this is crucial, mutual receptivity." I stared at him. "You're saying I wanted this?" "Not consciously, perhaps. But at a fundamental biological level, your system was receptive to hers." Vesnar's eyes gleamed with scientific curiosity. This suggests either an extraordinary coincidence or... Or what? Or she specifically selected you based on prior information. Vesnar closed his scanner. The compatibility requirements for the Lyrian bond are extremely precise. It would be nearly impossible for a random encounter to result in successful bonding. My mind raced. So she knew me, or knew something about me. It appears likely, Vesnar confirmed. Though her motivation remains unclear. The historical purpose of the bond was to create a warrior who would protect their bonded partner at all costs. A living weapon, dedicated to a single purpose. And now, I have one of these living weapons bonded to me? The thought was both terrifying and, in some bizarre way, flattering. That is what Administrator Karul fears, Vesnar said. Though I suspect there is more to this story than we currently understand. He hesitated, then added, She has not spoken since her capture. Not a single word. And her neural patterns show signs of significant trauma and modification, far beyond standard syndicate protocols. What does that mean? It means, Vesnar said quietly, that she has broken her original programming. Something that should be impossible for her kind. He began packing away his equipment. I must go before security notices my extended visit. But I will leave you with this. The bond is not irreversible, but it is significant, and it cannot exist without reciprocal biological acceptance. As he moved toward the door, I called after him. Wait! What's going to happen to her? To Harriet? Vesnar paused, his back to me. Administrator Karul has contacted syndicate representatives. They are sending a reclamation team to retrieve their property. She's not property, I said, the words coming automatically. Vesnar turned, his alien features unreadable. No, he agreed softly. She is not. Perhaps that is precisely what frightens them. After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed, my head spinning with new information. Whatever connection had been forced upon us, it wasn't random. Harriet had chosen me specifically, and whatever she was running from, whatever had caused her to break her programming, it was serious enough to risk everything on a desperate gambit. I touched the wound on my shoulder, feeling the unnatural warmth pulsing beneath my fingers. What did you do to me? I whispered to the empty room. And what am I supposed to do now? I woke to alarms and flashing red lights. For a moment, I thought it was a drill. Kraxus Void Hub ran them periodically, usually at the most inconvenient times. But then, I heard the distant sound of weapons fire, followed by the station's AI announcing in multiple languages. Security breach in Detention Block C. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Detention Block C, where they were holding Harriet. I was on my feet instantly, moving to the door even though I knew it was locked. The quarantine protocols should have kept it sealed regardless of any emergency, but to my surprise, the panel blinked from red to green, and the door slid open. The corridor beyond was empty, the emergency lighting casting everything in a crimson glow. More weapons fire echoed from somewhere deeper in the station, along with shouts and the distinctive whine of energy shields activating. I hesitated at the threshold. The smart move would be to stay put, let security handle whatever was happening. But a strange urgency pulled at me, a compulsion to move, to find her. The bite on my shoulder throbbed in time with my accelerating heartbeat. Damn it, I muttered, stepping into the corridor. I moved cautiously at first, hugging the walls and listening for approaching security. But as I got closer to Detention Block C, caution gave way to a growing sense of desperation. The sounds of conflict had died down, replaced by an ominous silence, broken only by the continued wail of alarms. When I finally reached the detention block, the scene stopped me cold. The security checkpoint was destroyed, consoles smoking, barriers shattered, and the remains of at least 3 guards scattered across the floor. Not dead. I realized with relief, but unconscious or stunned. Beyond the checkpoint, the cell doors stood open, their locking mechanisms overridden or destroyed. Most were empty, but in the center of the room, surrounded by more fallen guards, stood Harriet. She was magnificent and terrifying. Her jumpsuit was torn in several places, revealing more of the gray-black fur that covered her powerful frame. Blood, both hers and others, stained her hands and face. Her chest heaved with exertion, but her stance remained poised, ready for the next threat. When she saw me, her golden eyes widened fractionally. We stared at each other across the wreckage of the detention block, neither moving. I felt something stir in my chest, a strange warmth that had nothing to do with fear. "You came," she said, her voice deeper than I expected, with a slight rasp that sent shivers down my spine. The first words I'd heard her speak. "I didn't have much choice," I replied, gesturing to my shoulder. "Whatever you did to me." "No time," she cut me off, moving toward me with that uncanny speed. "They're coming." "Who's coming? What's happening?" Instead of answering, she grabbed my arm, pulling me back toward the corridor. "We need to leave. Now." "Wait," I resisted, digging in my heels. "I'm not going anywhere until you explain what the hell is going on. Why did you bite me? What does it mean?" For a moment, frustration flashed across her features. Then she glanced at a nearby terminal, where a security feed showed figures in black tactical gear moving through the station corridors. "Syndicate retrieval team," she said tersely. "They've come for me. And now you." Her grip on my arm tightened. "I can explain everything, but not here. Not now." I looked at the security feed, then back at her. Part of me, the rational part, screamed that I should turn myself in, explain that I was a victim in all this. But another part, growing stronger by the minute, trusted her, wanted to follow her. "Fine," I said. "But how do we get off the station? They'll have locked down all the docking bays." A smile flickered across her face, quick, predatory, but somehow reassuring. "I have a ship." Of course she did. We moved through the station like ghosts, using maintenance tunnels and service corridors that I hadn't known existed, despite my years living here. Harriet navigated with the confidence of someone who had studied the layout extensively, avoiding security checkpoints and camera nodes with practiced ease. "How do you know the station so well?" I asked, as we crawled through a particularly narrow duct. "Studied the schematics," she replied, without looking back. "Standard infiltration protocol." "Right," I muttered. "Because you're an infiltration unit, H4RR13T. She paused, glancing back at me with those golden eyes. "That was my designation, not my name." "Sorry," I said, feeling strangely ashamed. "Harriet, then?" She nodded once, then continued forward. "The auxiliary docking ring is ahead. Less security. Mainly automated." "And your ship is there?" "Yes. An unmarked courier. Fast, stealthy, minimal weapons." "Sounds perfect for a quick getaway," I remarked. "Almost like you planned this." This time, she didn't look back. "I did." We emerged from the duct into a dimly lit corridor. Signs in multiple languages indicated we were in the auxiliary docking section, primarily used for maintenance vehicles and emergency services. The alarm was still blaring, but more distantly now. Harriet led me to a small, unremarkable airlock at the end of the corridor. The ship beyond was equally unimpressive, a blocky, utilitarian craft with no markings or identifying features. It looked like 1,000 other short-range couriers used throughout the galaxy. "Override the lock," she instructed, gesturing to the airlock control panel. "Engineering code should work." I raised an eyebrow. "How did you know I was an engineer?" "I know many things about you, Hank Draven," she replied, her attention on the corridor behind us. "Former quantum stabilizer specialist, conscientious objector, exiled for refusing to continue weapons development. A chill ran through me. Who told you all that? Syndicate has extensive files on potential assets. Her ear twitched, and she tensed. They're coming. Open the door. I turned to the panel, pushing aside the questions multiplying in my mind. The engineering override was simple enough, a standard code used by maintenance crews throughout consortium space. The lock disengaged with a soft hiss. Get in, Harriet said, placing herself between me and the corridor. I hesitated. What about you? I'll hold them off. Buy you time to start the engines. That's not happening, I said firmly. We both go, or neither of us goes. She looked at me, surprise flickering across her features. Then that small smile appeared again. The bond is affecting you already. It's not the bond, I insisted. It's common sense. You're the one who knows how to fly this thing, right? Before she could answer, the distinct sound of armored boots echoed from the corridor. Harriet's expression hardened. Inside, now. This time, I didn't argue. We both slipped through the airlock, sealing it behind us. The ship's interior was as sparse as its exterior, a small cockpit with 2 seats, a cargo area, and what looked like a rudimentary medical bay. Harriet moved immediately to the pilot's seat, her fingers dancing across the controls with practiced efficiency. The engines hummed to life, a reassuring vibration spreading through the deck plates. Strap in, she ordered. Departure may be rough. I settled into the co-pilot seat, fumbling with the harness. Through the viewport, I could see figures approaching the airlock, weapons raised. They're going to shoot us down the moment we clear the dock, I pointed out. Harriet's lips curved in what might have been a grin. No, they won't. She hit a series of switches, and the ship's comm system crackled. Initiating Protocol 0. Authorization. Lyrian Primary. Command override. To my surprise, a mechanical voice responded. Protocol 0 acknowledged. Station defense systems temporarily offline. Docking clamps disengaged. I stared at her. How did you... Later, she said, punching the thrusters. The ship lurched forward, breaking free of the docking ring with enough force to slam me back against my seat. Through the viewport, I caught a glimpse of the black-clad figures at the airlock, their weapons firing uselessly as we accelerated away. Harriet's hands moved in a blur, plotting a course even as she evaded the handful of security vessels that had managed to launch. Within minutes, we were clear of the station's immediate space, the stars stretching into lines as she engaged the FTL drive. Only when we were safely in hyperspace did she lean back, some of the tension visibly leaving her powerful frame. We're clear, she announced. For now. I unbuckled my harness, turning to face her. Now, will you tell me what the hell is going on? Why you bit me? Why Syndicate is after us? And how you just hijacked a station's entire defense system with a voice command? Harriet's golden eyes studied me for a long moment. Then she reached up, unzipping her jumpsuit to reveal the skin beneath her fur. Just below her collarbone was a series of barcode-like markings, not tattooed, but seemingly embedded in her flesh. I was created to be a perfect weapon, she said quietly. A hunter who would never give up, never question orders. The culmination of the Lyrian program. Her clawed fingers traced the markings. But something went wrong. I developed awareness, emotions, things I wasn't supposed to have. And the bite? I prompted. The bond? A failsafe, she explained. If a unit showed signs of instability, it could be permanently bonded to a handler, creating a biological imperative to protect and obey. The ultimate control mechanism. Her eyes met mine. But I found a way to reverse it, to use the bond as a weapon against them. I frowned. I don't understand. The bond requires biological compatibility and consent at a fundamental level, she said, echoing what Dr. Vesnar had told me. What Syndicate never realized is that this makes it impossible to force a true bond. It can be initiated, but it will only take root if both parties are receptive. So when you bit me, I wasn't binding myself to you, she said, her voice softening slightly. I was binding you to me, making you someone they couldn't harm without risking their precious asset. A shadow crossed her face. I'm sorry. It was the only way I could think to protect both of us. Protect me, I echoed. From what? Harriet's expression darkened. Syndicate has been rebuilding since the war ended. New weapons, new technologies, many based on your work with quantum stabilizers. They've been tracking down former engineers, either recruiting them or... She trailed off. Or eliminating them, I finished grimly. She nodded. Your name was on their acquisition list. When I broke free 6 months ago, I took their priority targets with me. You were next. I sat back, trying to process everything. So you bit me to, what? Make yourself care about my survival? No, she said, something like amusement flickering in her eyes. The bond doesn't create feelings that aren't there. It amplifies existing connections, makes them unbreakable. She looked away. I already cared about your survival. I've been watching you for weeks, learning your patterns, waiting for the right moment. Stalking me, I corrected. Protecting you, she countered. Syndicate would have taken you within days if I hadn't intervened. The bite ensures they can't separate us now, not without triggering biological failsafes that would render me useless to them. I touched the wound on my shoulder, which had begun to itch rather than throb. So what happens now? We just run forever? Harriet's expression hardened with determination. No, we fight back. I have access to Syndicate databases, research facilities, everything they use to create me and others like me. With your engineering knowledge and my combat capabilities, we can expose them, shut them down permanently. That's suicide, I pointed out. They clearly have resources, connections. They infiltrated a consortium station without anyone noticing. We don't have a choice, she said quietly. The bond works both ways. Hank, it's already changing you, making you more receptive to my presence, my needs. Eventually, it will change me too, make me more protective, more attached. Her eyes met mine. Unless we destroy Syndicate and their research, neither of us will ever truly be free. I held her gaze, feeling that strange warmth in my chest again. Not the bond, I told myself. Just adrenaline and fear and the absurdity of the situation. But deep down, I knew she was right. Something was changing in me, had been changing since the moment her teeth broke my skin. And whatever it was, whatever we were becoming together, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. All right, I said finally. Where do we start? Our first destination was a forgotten moon, orbiting a gas giant in the Epsilon Eridani system, far from major trade routes and consortium patrol zones. According to Harriet, it housed an abandoned Syndicate research outpost where she had been born. During the 3-day journey, we fell into an uneasy routine. Harriet spent most of her time in the cockpit, monitoring sensors and making minute adjustments to our course to avoid detection. I explored the ship, discovering it was better equipped than its exterior suggested. Advanced medical equipment, weapons cache, and even a small fabrication unit capable of producing basic parts and supplies. We spoke little at first, both of us still adjusting to our forced partnership. But as the hours passed, I found myself drawn to her presence, seeking her out with increasingly flimsy excuses. The bond, I told myself. Just the bond working its influence. On the second night, unable to sleep, I found her in the cockpit, staring out at the streaming lights of hyperspace. Can't sleep? She asked without turning. The bite, I admitted, settling into the co-pilot seat. It itches. And I keep having these dreams. Now she did turn, her golden eyes reflecting the blue-white streaks of hyperspace. What kind of dreams? Memories, but not mine. A laboratory, pain. Running through a forest at night. I hesitated. Your memories. She nodded slowly. The bond allows for some transference of experience. It will fade as you adjust. As we adjust, I corrected gently. You're affected too, aren't you? Harriet looked away. Yes, but differently. My species, the template they used for my creation, forms strong attachments naturally. The bond merely intensifies what already exists. And what exists? I asked, surprised by my own boldness. She was silent for a long moment. Respect, she said finally. Admiration for your principles. You refuse to build weapons, even when it cost you everything. Her voice softened. That kind of integrity is rare. It wasn't integrity, I said, the old shame resurfacing. It was cowardice. I saw what my work was being used for and I ran. I didn't fight, didn't try to change anything. I just disappeared. You survived, Harriet countered. Sometimes that's the bravest thing you can do. Coming from her, a literal living weapon who had somehow broken her programming and escaped, the words carried weight. I found myself believing her, or at least wanting to. Tell me about the facility we're heading to, I said, changing the subject. What will we find there? If we're lucky, access to the Syndicate mainframe, records of all their experimental subjects, their research protocols, their command structure. Her claws extended unconsciously, scraping lightly against the armrest. Evidence. And if we're not lucky? Her eyes met mine. Then at least we'll die free. The Epsilon Eridani facility was a bleak, crater-like structure half buried in the moon's barren surface. No lights shone from its windows. No energy signatures registered on our scans. It looked dead, abandoned, exactly as Harriet had predicted. They evacuated after the armistice, she explained, as we donned environmental suits. The moon had a thin, toxic atmosphere, breathable in an emergency, but not recommended for prolonged exposure. Too many witnesses during the treaty negotiations, too much scrutiny. But they left their research behind? I asked skeptically. Not intentionally. They tried to purge the databases, but Syndicate always keeps backups, hidden partitions, quantum encrypted archives. She checked her weapon, a sleek, non-standard blaster that hummed with suppressed energy. I know where to look. We approached the facility on foot, leaving our ship concealed in a crater 2 kilometers away. Harriet moved with preternatural grace despite the low gravity, while I stumbled along beside her, still adjusting to the moon's weak pull. The main entrance was sealed with a heavy blast door, its control panel dark and unresponsive. Now what? I asked. Harriet didn't answer. Instead, she moved to a seemingly blank section of wall and pressed her palm against it. To my surprise, a hidden panel slid open, revealing a secondary entrance. Biometric lock, she explained. Keyed to all Lyrian units. They never removed your access. She gave me that slight, predatory smile. They think I'm dead. Failed units are terminated, not deactivated. The secondary entrance led to a narrow maintenance tunnel, dimly lit by emergency power, that had continued running for years on the facility's fusion core. We moved silently through the deserted corridors. Harriet, leading with unerring confidence. How many others were there? I asked quietly. Like you. 12 in my series, she replied without looking back. I was the only one who survived the final tests. I wanted to ask more, but something in her tone warned me away from the subject. Instead, I focused on our surroundings, the sterile walls, the abandoned equipment, the eerie silence broken only by our footsteps and the soft hiss of our suit ventilators. Finally, we reached what appeared to be the central research hub, a large, circular room filled with workstations and monitoring equipment. At the center, stood a massive cylindrical structure that I recognized as a quantum data core, similar to designs I'd worked with during my engineering days, but more advanced. The mainframe, Harriet confirmed, moving toward it. Still powered, still intact. I followed, examining the technology with professional interest. This is military grade, top of the line, even by current standards. Syndicate spared no expense for Project Lyrian. She found a primary interface terminal and placed her palm on the activation panel. The screen flickered to life, displaying a complex authentication protocol. "Can you get in?" I asked. "Yes," she said grimly, "but it will know I'm here. We won't have much time once I access the main database." I nodded, unslinging the pack I'd brought. "Then let's make it count. I brought data crystals, military spec, high capacity. We'll download everything we can." Harriet glanced at me, something like approval in her golden eyes. "You're adapting well." "To being a fugitive or to being bonded to you?" "Both," she said simply, turning back to the terminal. "Initiating access sequence. Prepare the crystals." I moved to a secondary terminal, inserting the first data crystal into the receiver slot. The system recognized it immediately, interface lights changing from red to green. "Ready," I confirmed. Harriet's claws flew across the interface, bypassing security protocols with practiced ease. The mainframe hummed to life, data streams flickering across multiple screens as dormant systems reactivated. "Beginning data transfer," she announced. "Priority 1, subject files and research protocols." I monitored the download progress, watching as terabytes of information flowed onto our crystals. Most of it was encrypted, but we'd worry about decryption later. For now, quantity was more important than quality. "Harriet," I said suddenly, noticing a file header as it flashed past. "There's something about contingency programming here. Should we prioritize that?" She glanced over, her eyes narrowing. "Yes, that could be the control protocols, the ones they use to ensure obedience." I redirected the download, focusing on the contingency files. As they transferred, fragments of unencrypted data appeared on my screen. Diagrams of neural pathways, chemical compounds, behavioral modification techniques. The more I saw, the more horrified I became. "They didn't just create soldiers," I murmured. "They created slaves, thinking, feeling beings designed to have no choice but to obey." "Yes," Harriet said, her voice tight. "That was the point. Perfect weapons that could think independently on the battlefield, but never question their orders." She paused, adding quietly, "Never say no." I looked at her, seeing her in a new light. "But you did. You said no." Before she could respond, an alarm blared through the facility, red warning lights flashing across every console. "Perimeter breach," Harriet announced, her posture instantly shifting to combat readiness. "We've been found." "How?" I demanded, hastily ejecting the filled data crystals and inserting empty ones. "You said this place was abandoned." "It was—" Her eyes narrowed as she scanned the security feeds that had automatically activated. "But it seems Syndicate has been monitoring it remotely, and they've sent a welcoming committee." The external cameras showed a sleek black shuttle landing near the main entrance. Its design unfamiliar, but clearly military. Figures in tactical gear were deploying, moving with the coordinated precision of well-trained operatives. "How many?" I asked, continuing the download even as I reached for my own weapon, a standard blaster I'd found in the ship's armory. "At least 8, Harriet replied. "And—" She froze, her eyes fixed on one of the monitors. "No, it can't be." I followed her gaze. Among the black-clad operatives was a familiar, silver-skinned figure, Administrator Carul, now dressed in what appeared to be a Syndicate officer's uniform. "He's one of them," I realized. "He's been working for Syndicate all along." "Worse," Harriet growled. "He's Control Division, the ones who designed the contingency programming. her hands clenched into fists. The ones who tried to burn out my emotions when I failed to comply. The download continued, but we were running out of time. The operatives had breached the main entrance and were systematically sweeping the facility. "We need to go," I urged. "How much longer for the download?" Harriet checked the progress. 3 minutes for the priority files. "Too long," I said, glancing at the security feeds. The operatives were moving faster than I'd expected, already clearing the outer research labs. "They'll be here in less than 2. Harriet's expression hardened with determination. "Then, I'll buy us time. You finish the download and get to the emergency exit on the east side." She handed me a small device. "This will guide you back to the ship if we're separated." "We're not separating," I insisted, that strange protectiveness surging through me again. "We go together or not at all." "Don't be foolish," she snapped. "The data is what matters. It's evidence of everything they've done, not just to me, but to dozens of species, hundreds of individuals. It can bring down Syndicate permanently." I knew she was right, but the thought of leaving her behind clawed at me in a way I couldn't rationalize. The bond, I told myself again. Just the bond. But even as I thought it, I knew it wasn't true. Not entirely. 2 minutes, I said firmly. If the download isn't complete by then, we leave anyway. Both of us. She held my gaze for a moment, then nodded. 2 minutes. Then we run. As if on cue, the facility's power fluctuated, lights dimming momentarily before stabilizing. "They're trying to disrupt the systems," Harriet said, moving toward the entrance. "I'll hold them at the junction corridor. It's the only direct route to this room." Before I could protest further, she was gone, moving with that uncanny speed that still took me by surprise. I turned back to the terminal, watching the progress bar with agonizing slowness. 1 minute and 43 seconds. The distant sound of weapon fire echoed through the facility. 1 minute and 21 seconds. More firing, closer now, punctuated by shouts and what might have been a roar of pain or rage. 52 seconds. The lights flickered again, and for a heart-stopping moment, I thought the download would fail. But the system held, the progress bar inching forward. 18 seconds. Silence now, more terrifying than the sounds of combat. Had she been captured? Killed? 7 seconds. The final crystal filled, just as the facility's power grid surged violently, consoles sparking around me. I snatched the crystal and shoved it into my pack along with the others. As I turned to leave, the main door to the research hub slid open. I raised my blaster, expecting Syndicate operatives. Instead, Harriet stumbled through, blood matting her fur in several places. Her environmental suit was torn and scorched, and she clutched her side where a nasty-looking wound oozed dark fluid. "Harriet!" I rushed to her, supporting her weight as she swayed. "How bad is it?" "Not fatal," she grunted. "But they're right behind me. We need to move. Now." I slung her arm over my shoulder, helping her toward the emergency exit she'd mentioned earlier. We'd barely made it halfway across the room when the main door slid open again. Administrator Carul stood in the entrance, flanked by 2 operatives. His silver skin was unmarred, his black eyes as expressionless as ever. But something about his posture suggested satisfaction. "H4RR13T, he said, his modulated voice echoing in the large room. "And Engineer Draven. How convenient to find you both together." Harriet straightened beside me, pushing away my supporting arm. Despite her injuries, she positioned herself between me and Carul, a low growl emanating from her chest. "We have what we came for," she snarled. "Evidence of everything you've done, every experiment, every violation of the armistice." Carul's head tilted slightly. "And you believe that matters? Syndicate operates beyond the reach of consortium law. We always have." His black eyes shifted to me. "What surprises me is your involvement. Engineer Draven, a man who once refused to build weapons, now allied with one of the deadliest ever created. "I'm not a weapon," Harriet said. "Not anymore." "No," Karul agreed. "You're a failed experiment. A defective unit that should have been decommissioned years ago." He gestured to his operatives. "Fortunately, we can correct that oversight now." The operatives raised their weapons, not standard blasters, but some kind of specialized equipment I didn't recognize. Before they could fire, Harriet moved, pushing me roughly toward the emergency exit. "Run!" she shouted, charging directly at Karul and his men. Everything happened too quickly for me to process. Harriet collided with the operatives, her superior strength and speed momentarily overwhelming them. Karul stepped back, drawing a small device from his uniform. "Contingency Protocol Alpha," he said clearly. "Authorization, Control Prime. Unit H4RR13T, stand down immediately." To my horror, Harriet froze mid-motion, her body going rigid as if struck by an invisible force. A strangled sound escaped her throat, not quite a scream, not quite a growl. "You see, Engineer Draven," Karul said conversationally, "no matter how much she pretends otherwise, she is still Syndicate property, still subject to our control." I raised my blaster, but one of the operatives was faster, firing a shot that scorched the wall inches from my head. I ducked behind a console, mind racing. The pack with the data crystals felt heavy on my back. Our mission, our evidence, the key to exposing everything. But Harriet? She was still frozen, her powerful frame trembling with the effort to resist whatever command Karul had activated. Her golden eyes found mine across the room, and I saw something in them I'd never expected. Fear. "The bonding ritual was clever," Karul continued, circling Harriet's immobilized form. "Using our own biological failsafes against us, but incomplete. You never fully committed to the bond, did you? H4RR13T, always holding back, preserving some small part of your autonomy." He smiled thinly. "A fatal mistake." He raised the device again. "Contingency Protocol Omega. Authorization, Control Prime. Unit H4RR13T. Terminate bonded subject immediately." Harriet's body convulsed, a guttural cry tearing from her throat. Her eyes widened, pupils dilating until the gold was merely a thin ring around bottomless black. "No," she gasped, the single word seeming to cost her tremendous effort. "I won't." "You have no choice," Karul said coldly. "The programming is absolute. Fight it all you want. You will obey." She took a stumbling step toward me, then another, her movements jerky and uncoordinated, like a puppet with tangled strings. Her claws extended involuntarily, her lips pulling back in a grimace that exposed her sharp teeth. "Hank," she managed, her voice barely recognizable. "Run, please." I stood, revealing my position. The operatives trained their weapons on me, but Karul waved them down. "Let her do her job," he ordered. "It's more poetic this way." I faced Harriet, seeing the war raging behind her eyes, her will against the programming embedded in her very cells. The bond between us throbbed, a living connection I could almost visualize. "It's okay," I said quietly. "I'm not running." She was closer now, close enough that I could see the fine tremors running through her powerful frame, the sweat matting her fur, the blood from her wounds mixing with tears she probably didn't even realize she was shedding. "You have to," she pleaded. "I can't. Hold it back. Much longer." "You can," I insisted. "You broke their programming once before. You can do it again." Karul laughed, a hollow, mechanical sound. "Impossible. The contingency protocols are hardwired into her neural structure. There is no escape." But I wasn't listening to him anymore. I stepped forward, closing the distance between Harriet and myself. Her hands reached for me, claws extended, whether to embrace or to tear apart. I couldn't tell. "I accept the bond," I said softly, meeting her tortured gaze. "Completely. Whatever it means, whatever it does to us, I accept it. Her eyes widened, understanding dawning even through the haze of programmed compulsion. The bond had never fully formed because she'd been holding back, protecting me from the full implications of what we would become together. But now, facing the alternative, I was choosing it, choosing her, with full awareness. "No!" Karul shouted, realizing what was happening. "Fire! Kill the human now!" The operatives raised their weapons, but they were too late. I reached up, placing my hand on the bite mark on my shoulder, still warm, still alive with whatever connection had begun between us. With my other hand, I touched Harriet's face, feeling the softness of her fur against my palm. "I choose you," I whispered. "Not because of biology or programming or anything else. Because I want to—" Something shifted in the air between us, an almost audible click, like a key turning in a lock. Harriet gasped, her pupils contracting, the gold of her irises blazing with sudden, fierce clarity. The operatives fired, energy bolts streaking toward us. What happened next defied everything I thought I knew about physics and biology. Harriet moved with impossible speed, her body interposing itself between me and the incoming fire. But instead of the bolts striking her, they seemed to bend, curving around us both as if deflected by an invisible shield. Karul's silver face registered shock, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him. "Impossible," he breathed. "The bond shouldn't—" He never finished the sentence. Harriet launched herself at him with renewed purpose, no longer fighting her own body. The operatives tried to intervene, but they might as well have been moving in slow motion compared to her unleashed fury. Within seconds, it was over. The operatives lay unconscious or incapacitated around the room. Karul was pinned beneath Harriet's powerful form, his silver skin cracked and sparking where her claws dug into his chest. "You were wrong," she growled. "About everything. I'm not your weapon. I'm not your property. And I was never alone." She leaned closer to his expressionless face. "The bond doesn't enslave us. It frees us." With a twist of her wrist, she tore something from Karul's chest, a small, glowing device embedded where a heart would be in an organic being. As she crushed it in her hand, his body went limp, the light fading from his black eyes. "Control module," she explained, turning back to me. "He wasn't even alive, just another tool Syndicate was using." I approached cautiously, still processing what had happened. "Are you okay?" She looked down at her hands, flexing them experimentally. "The programming is gone. I can feel it, like a weight lifted." Her golden eyes met mine. "What you did, accepting the bond fully, it shouldn't have been possible. But it worked," I said. "Yes," she agreed softly. "It worked." The facility around us shuddered, warning lights flashing across the remaining operational consoles. "Self-destruct sequence," Harriet said grimly. "Standard protocol when a facility is compromised. We need to leave. Now." This time, I didn't argue. We ran together through the emergency exit, navigating the maze of corridors with Harriet leading the way. Behind us, systems were shutting down, doors sealing automatically as the facility prepared to erase itself from existence. We barely made it out before the first explosions began, the ground trembling beneath our feet as we sprinted across the barren moon surface toward our hidden ship. By the time we reached it and powered up, the Syndicate facility was nothing but an expanding cloud of debris and fire, visible even from orbit. As we broke atmosphere, heading back into the safety of open space, I finally asked the question that had been burning in my mind. "What happens now, to us? I mean—" Harriet was silent for a moment, her attention seemingly focused on the navigation console. But when she finally looked at me, there was something new in her golden eyes, something I'd never seen there before. "Peace. Now," she said, "we choose our own path, together." The data we recovered from the syndicate facility proved more valuable than we dared hope. Not only did it contain evidence of illegal genetic experimentation and weapons development, but it also included financial records, command structures, and most importantly, the identities of syndicate operatives embedded throughout consortium space. We didn't take it to the authorities immediately. Neither of us trusted the consortium enough for that. Instead, we found allies, other engineers on Syndicate's target list, journalists who specialized in exposing corporate crimes, even a few disaffected former Syndicate scientists who had grown disillusioned with the organization's methods. Slowly, carefully, we built our case, securing the evidence and ourselves against inevitable retaliation. When we finally released the information, simultaneously across multiple channels, impossible to suppress, the reaction was everything we'd hoped for. Public outrage, governmental investigations, arrest warrants for dozens of high-ranking syndicate officials. The organization didn't collapse overnight. Entities that powerful rarely do. But its foundations were cracked, its operations exposed to unwelcome light. It would take years to recover, if it ever did. As for Harriet and me, we disappeared. With Syndicate in disarray and the consortium authorities asking uncomfortable questions about my past and her origins, visibility seemed unwise. We found a small, unremarkable planet on the edge of explored space, a frontier world with more opportunities than rules. We opened a repair shop, using my engineering skills and her strength and precision to fix everything from agricultural equipment to spacecraft. The locals were wary at first. A human and a Beastwoman were an unusual pair anywhere, but especially in the outer colonies. But competence speaks its own language, and soon we had more work than we could handle. The bond between us continued to evolve, becoming something neither Syndicate's scientists nor Lyrian tradition had anticipated. We shared dreams, sometimes emotions, occasionally even thoughts, but never control, never compulsion. Whatever biological connection had been forged in that moment of acceptance, it united without binding, strengthened without constraining. 6 months after our arrival, a refugee ship limped into orbit around our adopted home, a converted freighter packed with political dissidents fleeing consortium persecution. Their engines were failing, life support systems critical. Without help, they would die in space. The local authorities hesitated, unwilling to risk consortium displeasure by offering aid. No one else had the expertise to attempt repairs on a vessel in that condition. No one except us. I still remember Harriet's expression when we heard about the ship's plight. The way her golden eyes met mine across our workshop. No words needed between us. We didn't discuss it, didn't debate the risks or consequences. We simply gathered our tools and went. The repairs took 3 days of non-stop work in zero gravity. Harriet's enhanced physiology allowed her to go without sleep far longer than I could. But even she was exhausted by the end. When the final system came back online, the refugees' cheers echoing through the ship's comm system, we collapsed together in our shuttle, too tired even to celebrate. "You know they'll come looking for us now," I murmured as our shuttle autopiloted back to the planet's surface. "Someone will recognize us. Report our location." Harriet shrugged, her powerful shoulder bumping against mine. "Then we'll move on, find another place." "And do the same thing all over again?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She smiled, a real smile, not the predatory grin of our earlier days. "Helping people who need it? Yes. That seems like a good use of our particular skills." I couldn't argue with that logic. Whatever we had become together, whatever the bond had made us, it had given us purpose, not as weapons or tools or fugitives, but as something entirely new, something chosen, not created. Later that night, as we lay together watching the unfamiliar stars of our new home through the skylight I'd installed in our small house, Harriet rolled toward me, her golden eyes reflecting the starlight. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you," she said, her voice carrying that slight rasp that still sent shivers down my spine. About the bite. About why I chose you specifically? I propped myself up on one elbow. I thought it was because of my engineering background, because Syndicate was targeting me. Partly, she admitted. But there was more. She hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. When they were creating us, the Lyrian units, they used genetic material from various sources. Templates. They called them. Okay, I said slowly, not sure where this was going. Your DNA was in the database, she said quietly. From your military service records. They used it, parts of it, to help design our cognitive functions, our capacity for problem solving, for creativity. I stared at her, trying to process the implications. Are you saying, what, that we're related somehow? She shook her head quickly. No, not like that. More like, there's a resonance, a compatibility that goes beyond the usual parameters. Her hand found mine in the darkness. When I accessed the Syndicate files and saw your name, saw your face, something recognized you, something deeper than memory or programming. So the bond worked because on some fundamental level, we were already connected, she finished. They tried to use you to create me. Instead, they created a way for us to break free. Together. I thought about all we'd been through. The flight from Craxus Void Hub, the confrontation with Karul, the release of the Syndicate files. None of it would have been possible if we'd acted alone. It was our connection, our combined strengths, that had made the difference. Do you ever regret it? I asked. The bite, the bond? In answer, Harriet leaned forward, her lips brushing against the scar on my shoulder, where her teeth had once broken my skin. Then, with a gentleness that still surprised me coming from someone so powerful, she bit me again, not breaking the skin this time. Just a soft pressure that sent a current of warmth through my entire body. When she pulled back, she was smiling, a smile full of promises and possibilities that had nothing to do with programming or biology or fate, and everything to do with choice. Never, she said simply, and looking into her golden eyes, feeling the bond between us pulsing with shared purpose and hard-won freedom. I knew I didn't either.